old story, a very old story. And as many of our old stories begin, it begins once upon
A time.
There was a miller, and he had 3 sons, a mill, a donkey, and a cat. Now, the sons had to grind the grain at the mill. The donkey had to haul the grain and take away the flour. The cat had to catch the mice. When the old miller died, the sons had to divide the inheritance. The oldest son received the mill. The middle son, the donkey. The youngest son, the cat. That was all that was left for him, and he was not very happy about that. I got the worst of everything. My oldest brother, he can make money with the mill. My middle brother, well, he can rent out the donkey, or he can even ride the donkey, but what can I do with the cat? I could make gloves out of his fur, but then that would be that. There'd be no more. Listen, said the cat, who had understood everything that had been said. You don't want to kill me and make a inferior pair of gloves out of my fur? No. What you want to do is have a pair of boots made for me.
No.
And then I can go out and mix with people, and soon I'll be helping you. Now, the miller's son was just astonished, amazed that the cat could speak like this. And just then, there happened to be walking by the shoemaker, the cobbler. And so he called him in, and he had the cat measured for a pair of boots.
Ooh.
Now, when the boots were finished, the cat pulled them on. He took a sack, and then he filled the bottom of it with grain. He tied a cord around the top, and then he threw that sack over his shoulders, and out the door he went, walking on his 2 feet in those boots, just like a human. The ruler at that time in this land was a king who loved to eat partridges. However, the problem was the partridges had become very, very difficult to catch. There were lots of partridges in the woods, but they had become so wary of the hunters that the king's men could not get close enough to trap them. Now the cat knew this, and he had a plan. He went into the forest. He laid that sack down, opened it up, spread the grain around, and then took the end of that cord that tied the sack and hid himself behind a bush. And by, along came some plump partridges.
Woo!
They found the grain, and one by one they hopped into that sack. And the cat, when there was a great number of partridges in that sack, pulled the cord shut, went up, threw that sack over his shoulder, and went straight away to the king's palace. A guard shouted, "Halt! Where to?" And the cat said, "To the king." "To the king? A cat? Are you crazy?" But another guard said, "Oh, let him go. The king is often bored, and perhaps the cat would amuse him." And so the cat went before the king, and he bowed deeply. "Your Highness, my master, the Count," and here he rattled off a very, very long and dignified sounding name. "He sends his greetings and these partridges he caught for you." The king was delighted. Oh, plump, wonderful partridges. Oh, he couldn't believe this. He was so overjoyed. He told the cat, "Go to my treasury. Fill your sack with as much gold as you can carry, and then take that to your master along with my many, many thanks." The miller's son was at home, sitting in front of a window, worrying. He had spent his last pennies to have those boots made for the cat. and he really didn't think the cat would be able to bring him anything in return. But just then, in came the cat. He threw the sack down on the floor, opened it up, and poured out all that gold at the young man's feet. "There you go. That should pay for my boots." And the king sends his greetings and his thanks to you. The young man was speechless. He was very excited about the wealth, but he had no idea how this had come about. Now, while he was pulling his boots off, the cat explained everything that had happened. "Now, surely you think this is enough wealth for you, but oh no, we're not going to be content with that now, are we? No, we want more. So tomorrow I will pull my boots on, go hunting, and bring you even more wealth. Oh, incidentally, I told the king that you're a count." The cat was true to his word. The next day, he pulled on his boots, he went hunting, he caught another sack full of fat partridges and took them to the king, and this went on day after day after day. And every day the cat came home with another sack of gold for the young miller boy. And so it went. Now the cat had become a favorite at court, and he was allowed to go wherever he pleased. And one morning, he was warming himself in front of the fire in the king's kitchen. And in came the coachman, cursing, "Blast! To the devil with the king and the princess. I wanted to go to the tavern and go drinking and play some cards. No, the king and the princess need to go to the lake, and I have to drive them." Now the cat heard this, and straightway he ran home, and he told the miller's son, "If you want to become a wealthy count, come with me now to the lake and take a swim." Well, the miller's son did not know what to think of this, but he obeyed the cat. They went to the lake, he took his clothes off, and he jumped in the lake. Now the cat picked up his clothes, carried them away, and hid them in a bush. No sooner had he done this than along came the coach carrying the king and the princess. The cat jumped out and yelled, "Your Majesty, my master the count, he's in the lake. Now, a thief came and stole his clothes while they were lying on the shore here, and my master cannot come out of the water now. He'll freeze to death. He'll die of a cold." And the king instantly stopped his carriage, and he ordered a servant to go back to the castle and bring some of his own royal garments for the count. Well, the miller's son, or the count, put on these splendid garments. And then the king, who was, well, he'd never met the count, but he was very fond of him already because of all the partridges that he had sent. And he invited the young man to come into the royal carriage and sit right beside him. The princess didn't mind this at all. The count was young and handsome, and she quite liked him already. Meanwhile, the cat had run on ahead, and he came to a great meadow where there were more than 100 people mowing hay. And the cat asked, "You people, who owns this meadow?" And the people said, "The great sorcerer." "Well, listen, you people. The king is going to be driving by here in his coach soon. And when he asks you whose meadow this is, you must all say, 'It belongs to the count.' If you do not do this, you will all be killed." And then he went on until he came to a vast field of grain, so large that you couldn't even see the end of it. And there were more than 200 people there cutting the grain. "You people, who owns all this grain?" "The sorcerer," they said. "Well, listen, you people. The king is going to be coming by here in his coach soon, and when he asks you whose grain this is, you must all answer, 'It belongs to the count.' And if you do not do this, you will all be killed."
No.
And then he went on until he came to a magnificent forest. There were more than 300 people here, cutting down the great oaks and making lumber. And the cat asked, "You people, whose forest is this?" And the people answered, "The sorcerer." Listen, you must all answer when the king comes by and asks whose forest this is. Say it belongs to the count. If you do not do this, you will all be killed. The cat went on, walking away, and the people all stared after him. He looked so unusual, walking along and upright on his two legs in those handsome boots. They were rather afraid of him. The cat came to the sorcerer's house, and he boldly walked right in, right up to the sorcerer. The sorcerer looked down his nose. "What do you want, little cat?" The cat bowed politely. "You, great sorcerer, I have been told, can change yourself into anything you want. Now, I believe that you can change yourself into a dog or a fox or even a wolf. But I find it hard to believe. I do not believe that you could change yourself into something like an elephant. And I have come here to be convinced with my own eyes." "Oh, little cat, that is nothing." And instantly, the sorcerer changed himself into an elephant. The cat applauded. "That was marvelous, but could you make yourself into a lion?" "Of course." Suddenly, there was a lion roaring, and the cat pretended to be afraid. "Incredible, marvelous, unbelievable! Even in my wildest dreams, I did not think that this would be possible. Oh, sorcerer, the only thing that could top this would be if you could make yourself into a tiny little animal, like maybe a mouse. But I know that you are greater than any sorcerer in the world, and even that would be too much for you." "Oh, little mouse, that is not too much." And suddenly there he was, scurrying on the floor like a little mouse, and the cat ran after him, caught him with one leap, and ate him up. Meanwhile, the king, the princess, and the count were traveling along the coach, and they came to that great meadow. And the king stopped the coach and called out, "You people, who does this meadow belong to?" And all the people shouted back, "It belongs to the count!"
Count!
Just as the cat had ordered them to. The king looked at the count and said, "Oh, Count, you have a magnificent meadow here." They rode on until they came to that great field of grain. And again, the king stopped his carriage and he called out, "You people, who owns this field of grain?" And the people all shouted out, "The count!" Again, the king looked at the count and said, "Count, you have a wonderful farm here." And on they went until they came to that magnificent forest. He stopped the coach and again called out, "You people, who owns this forest?" And they all shouted, "The count!" The king looked at the count. "Oh, Count, you must be a very wealthy man. I do not believe that even I have a forest this magnificent." And on they went until they came to the sorcerer's palace. The cat was waiting on the steps, and when the coach stopped, down he jumped. He opened the door, and he said to the king, "Welcome, your highness, to the palace of my master, the count. It is such an honor you have given him by helping him, and then by visiting his humble palace. He will be happy for the rest of his days." The king stepped out of the coach and admired this magnificent palace that was almost as large and lovely as his own. And then the miller's son, the count, helped the princess out of the carriage and up the steps and into the main hall of the palace. It was shimmering with gold and magnificent jewels. And, well, you may have already guessed that the prince, or rather the count and the princess, fell in love, and they were married, and they lived quite happily. And when the old king died, the count became king, and his prime minister was none other than his very good friend, the Puss in Boots.